y'all, welcome back to my channel, and today I am going to be sharing a very highly requested recipe. So in my last video I talked about these keto jalapeno and cheese bagel dogs that I made, and they are to die for. And so many of y'all requested the recipe, so I thought I would hop on here today and share this recipe with y'all. It's pretty simple to make. It takes maybe 10 to 15 minutes to throw together. Doesn't take long at all. Then you throw it in the oven and they're ready to go. So today I am going to be sharing my keto-friendly jalapeno and cheese bagel dog recipe. So without further ado, let's just hop right into this recipe. The first step is preheating your oven to 375 degrees. The first step of this recipe will be creating a fathead dough. This is what we'll wrap around the meat or the sausage that you use in this recipe. So my fathead dough that I am going to make today consists of 1 egg, 10 ounces of mozzarella cheese, 5 ounces of almond flour, and a teaspoon of baking powder. And we will use these ingredients to make the fathead dough. However, the other part of this recipe is the meat and what you're going to stuff inside. So today I am just going plain and simple. I have some hot dogs right here, but you can get creative, get some fancy sausages to wrap inside, kind of whatever strikes your fancy. And then I am going to use some Gouda cheese inside of these, as well as some of these sliced jalapenos. So these are the ingredients you're going to need to create these jalapeno and cheese bagel dogs. To begin this recipe, you are going to need a microwave-safe bowl, and to make it easy on yourself, a food scale to weigh out the 10 ounces of cheese we are going to use. So what I do is just grab my food scale, set it on the counter, set my bowl right on top of it, turn it on, and I am going to take my big bag of mozzarella cheese and weigh out 10 ounces. I weighed out my 10 ounces of mozzarella cheese. So now what we're going to do is microwave this cheese in 30-second increments and then stir it every 30 seconds as well until it is fully melted. Alright guys, it took my cheese about 90 seconds to be totally melted in the microwave. So now that it's melted, we can move on to the next step of creating the fathead dough. What I am going to do is crack in 1 large egg. And now I am going to use a spatula to combine this egg into the cheese. And I really don't know what this spatula is called, but it's just a really hard spatula. It just works really well in creating this fathead dough. So what I'm going to do is just kind of mix this egg into the cheese until it is all combined. It'll take maybe a minute or two. Now that my egg and cheese are combined, I am once again going to grab my handy dandy food scale, set it on the counter, turn it on, and we are going to add in 5 ounces of almond flour. And lastly, I am going to add in 1 teaspoon of baking powder. I am also going to add just a little bit of salt into my dough as well. And now the final step is combining this almond flour into our egg and cheese mixture. And that is done by just messing with this, kneading it like crazy for about 3 to 5 minutes until it is all nice and combined. You just gotta work this. If the cheese has cooled off enough, you can get your hands wet and really get in there and knead it together, but this cheese is still pretty hot. So I'm going to use my handy dandy spatula, I still don't know the name of, and just mix it all in together. It took me a couple of minutes of kneading, but as you can see, I have this nice big ball of Fathead dough ready for our bagel dogs. So what I like to do is set a big piece of parchment paper out on the counter. And let me reiterate, use parchment paper in this recipe. Do not use wax paper. This will stick. Use parchment paper, guys. But to do this, what I like to do is lay out my little piece of parchment paper. I like to do a few drips of olive oil because it just kind of helps the dough spread. Just kind of put it all over. And then I dump out my Fathead dough into the middle of the parchment paper. And you can use a rolling pin, but I always tend to just use my hands. It's easiest. So I am just going to start slowly moving this out and forming like a large rectangular shape. And as you can see, it kind of sticks to my hands. So what I do is pour a little bit of this olive oil into my hands, and that'll keep the dough from sticking. So just get your hands nice and oily, and you can really work this dough. So it'll take a couple of minutes to form it into this rectangle, but just take it nice and slow and spread it out. As you can tell, I have my dough in a rough rectangular shape. So now what I'm going to do is take my little hard spatula and just cut it into about 8 equal portions. Now that I've cut it into the 8 sections, what I'm going to do is just kind of pull apart each little section and set it on its own. Up next, I am going to take my Gouda cheese and lay a slice on top of each piece of dough. As you can tell, I kind of ripped each slice of cheese to fit long ways on the dough. And now what I'm going to do is just go ahead and add my hot dogs on top of each piece of dough. And now the final step is just trying to wrap everything together. And now these are not going to be perfect. This dough can be a little tricky to work with, so you just kind of got to work with it and tell it nice things and hope it works for you. These are probably not going to be the prettiest things ever, but I will promise you they do taste so good. So now I am just going to work on closing up all of these. Alright guys, as you can tell, I just finished wrapping up all of my bagel dogs. I set them on a baking sheet and I'm cooking them on a silicone mat. I highly recommend cooking them either on a silicone baking mat or parchment paper or a very, very well greased baking pan because these will stick. The final step of this recipe is to grab your jalapenos. You can omit this step if you don't like jalapenos, but I am just going to top each bagel dog with a couple of jalapenos. I'm doing quite a few jalapenos because the jalapenos just taste so good once they're cooked. So I add a couple of extra because Cody and I both really like them. Alright guys, the jalapeno and cheese bagel dogs are ready to go in the oven. I am going to cook them in a 375 degree oven for roughly 15 to 20 minutes or until they start turning golden brown on top. After about 22 minutes in the oven, my bagel dogs are nice and golden brown and ready to be eaten. So you can eat these right out of the oven, or if you want to store them, you can store them in an airtight Ziploc bag, pop them in the fridge, and when you're ready to heat them up, pop them in like your toaster oven, which is what I always do, and they will get that nice crispy crust once again. This bagel dog recipe is pretty quick and easy, and just look at these. They look so darn good. Oh my golly. Let's do a quick taste test, basically because I want to give them a try. Cheers. Well guys, I hope that you enjoyed this jalapeno and cheese bagel dogs recipe. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel down below if you haven't done so. And I will see y'all again real soon with another video. Bye guys! Mwah!